Well, one, thank you very much, and I'll take a little more than 5 minutes here, but we'll try to plow through it. Mr. Comey, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the top of the line, great, how would you rate the Crossfire Hurricane investigation in terms of being done thoroughly, by the book, an investigation the FBI should be proud of?
I'm not sure I can apply a number scale, but I would say in the main it was done by the book, it was appropriate, and it was essential that it be done.
Okay, so you're proud of it?
Overall, I'm proud of the work. There are parts of it that are concerning, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but overall, I'm proud of the work.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, when did you first learn of the existence of the Steele dossier?
Sometime towards the end of September of 2016.
Okay. Do you agree with Mr. Horowitz that the dossier was central and essential to the Carter Page FISA warrant application being approved?
I agree that it was important. I can't tell you whether it was essential, and by that I mean that it wouldn't have been granted without the Steele information.
Let's go through the application. There are two parts to the application. Was there an effort to get a warrant approved without using the dossier?
Yes, my understanding is in the summer they asked DOJ whether they would support moving forward on a warrant application.
And they said no, right?
Correct. That's my understanding from the Horowitz report.
Then you add the dossier, all of a sudden they say yes to the warrant application. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's fair to say that DOJ decided to move forward after the Steele information was part of it.
Yes, so I would say that it was central and essential based on that. Now, here's what I'd like to ask. The contacts between Mr. Page and alleged Russian operatives are one part of the application, is that correct?
That's my recollection.
Okay. Did Mr. Page deny knowing people that you accused him of having contact with?
I don't remember. I think the Horowitz report says that in the fall of 2016, speaking to an FBI source, he denied knowing certain people, but that's about all I recall.
Well, here's the facts. He denied knowing these people, and the FBI has yet to find any evidence that he was lying. The people that he did have contact with, did he tell the FBI that he was working for the CIA and that's why he had contacts with these people?
I don't remember that.
Do you now agree that the CIA confirmed that Mr. Page was in fact helping them?
I know from the Horowitz report that the CIA confirmed he was what they call a contact.
So the FBI in August of 2016 had information from the CIA informing the FBI that in fact Mr. Page was a resource. Did you not know that?
I did not know of the nature of his relationship with the CIA. What I'm telling you is what I read in the Horowitz report.
Do you think it would have been fair for the FBI to tell the court that Mr. Page had a reason to be talking to these people because he was working with the CIA? Would that have been a fair thing to tell the court?
I don't agree with your characterization of what Mr. Horowitz found. So
no, I'm talking about you as a director. The FBI has in its possession in August 2016 information from the CIA confirming what Mr. Page said, that he in fact was assisting the CIA, which explained the contacts. That was never given to the court. Should they have been informed of that? Because that's exculpatory to Mr. Page.
I believe Mr. Horowitz found that they should have at least considered informing the court.
You're the director of the FBI, would you wish that had been done if you had known about it?
I'm sorry, Senator, that what had been done?
That you had informed the court that Mr. Page was in fact working with the CIA, and that explains these contacts. Do you think out of a sense of fairness, the court should have been informed of that fact?
Again, I don't agree with your preamble. I don't think the record established that he was working with the CIA. I think Horowitz found he was a contact, which means
we've got the email from the CIA confirming that he was a source for the CIA. Are you aware of the fact that that email later on was doctored?
Again, I don't accept what you said. I don't think the record establishes he was a source for the CIA. I am aware from the Horowitz
Why is
report.
Mr. Kleinsmith facing criminal indictment?
I only know what I've read in the public record, that he was accused of
You're
changing.
the director of the FBI. You didn't know that your own agency had information from the CIA verifying what Mr. Page told you, that these contacts had a basis, in fact, because he was working with the CIA. Did you know that Mr. Kleinsmith doctored the email for it to read that there was no association between Page and the CIA, that he changed there was to there was not? How do you feel about that?
I know nothing about Mr. Kleinsmith other than what I've read in the
Well,
public
how do you
record.
feel in general about an FBI lawyer doctoring information exculpatory to somebody being surveilled?
Any false statement in the course of an investigation is deeply
But you didn't know anything about that, okay? In October, when the warrant was submitted, the application was submitted, what effort had been made to verify the dossier in October?
I don't know specifically. I know the Counterintelligence Division was working to see how much of it they could rule in and rule out.
How much time did they spend ruling in and ruling out regarding the dossier in October?
I do not.
You don't know?
I don't.
You signed the application. Whose job is it to make sure the facts are right when you present them to the FISA court?
Well, the most basic level, the affiant, whoever is signing the affidavit.
Did you sign the affidavit?
No, I signed a certification, which is required of the FBI director.
Okay. Does the FBI director have any responsibility to make sure the facts are right when they're given to the court?
Not in connection with the certification, but in general, the FBI director is responsible for everything that's being done underneath the FBI director.
What we're trying to find is who provided the application to the FISA court and why was it so flawed? Can you give me a group of people we can look at to hold accountable for misleading the court? Who should we be looking at?
To understand the process in general, and in this case, you would start with the Horowitz report, where he recounts all the many people involved in the review, production, and delivery to the court of this application.
But you don't know, as the director of the FBI, who actually prepared the application. Is that correct?
I do not.
Okay. All right. So in October, it's clear, Mr. Comey, there was no effort to verify the dossier before it was given to the court. Do you agree with that?
I don't know the answer.
Well, that's the answer. In January of 12th, 2017, the warrant application was renewed. Did you sign that?
I signed a certification in connection with, I think,
Okay.
2 renewals, one in January and one 3 months later.
Are you aware of the fact between October and January, the FBI had found that the Russian subsource was on the payroll of Mr. Steele, was suspected of being a Russian spy by the FBI all the way back to 2009?
I don't remember learning anything additional about Steele's sources
How
between
can it be, Mr. Director, that the FBI finds in its file that the man that prepared the dossier for Steele was suspected of being a threat to national security, and it doesn't make it up to you?
I don't know. I could speculate, but I don't know. I haven't
Well,
spoken to the
I don't want you to speculate. We'll try to figure this all out ourselves. Do you know who Christopher Steele was? When did you find out who he was?
When the Steele dossier was briefed to me sometime, like I said, I think late September.
Were you ever told that he hated Trump and he wanted him to lose, and he very much down on Donald Trump as a person?
Not that I recall, no.
You don't remember Bruce Orr briefing the team about Steele's biases, that you have to really watch this guy?
I don't remember Bruce Orr ever briefing me.
Do you remember friendly foreign governments putting us on notice that he tends to exaggerate? He goes off on crusades. Did that make it to you?
I don't recall that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Should the court have been informed in a perfect world that the primary subsource was a suspected Russian spy?
At a minimum, the team of the FBI and Justice should have discussed whether to inform the court about that.
Were you aware that in December 2016, the CIA tells the FBI they characterized the dossier as internet rumor?
I don't recall being informed of that.
Were you ever told by the CIA to be careful with the dossier and still that that this is not good craft here?
I don't remember ever being told anything like that.
Okay. All right, so let's fast forward now. The warrant application is renewed in April 2017. You signed it in January the 12th. You didn't know that the primary subsource was suspected by the FBI of being a Russian spy all the way back to 2009. You didn't know that the CIA had told the FBI the document's internet rumor. Are you aware of the fact that the subsource was actually interviewed by the FBI in January 2017?
I don't remember anything about interviews of the subsource.
So, as the director, was this an important case for the FBI, or is this kind of a run-of-the-mill thing?
The overarching investigation was very important. The Page slice of it, far less.
Well, I mean, you have a sitting president of the United States by January 2017. You have a dossier that's salacious as hell that accuses the president of being involved in all kind of sex escapades in Russia and a bunch of other stuff. And you keep using that document over and over again to get a warrant. And here's my question. Every time you found information to put the reliability of the dossier in question, everybody seemed to ignore it and just plowed forward. So I want to know, in January, you're not aware of the fact that the FBI interviewed the primary subsource. Is that your testimony?
I do not remember being told about any interview of...
Should you have been told about it?
I can't answer that because I wasn't, and so I don't know what the considerations were.
Well, here's what happened. The primary subsource told the FBI in January 2017, after the dossier had been used twice to get a warrant, that the subsource has no idea where some of the language attributed to him came from, that the context never mentioned some of the information attributed to them, and that he did not know the origins of other information that was supposedly from his contacts. He said the statements were word of mouth and hearsay, conversations had with friends over beers, and were statements made in jest that should be taken with a grain of salt. Did any of that ever get to you?
Not that I recall, no.
Do you agree that's pretty important information concerning the reliability of the dossier?
It's information that should be weighed in light of a variety of circumstances.
It's inherently exculpatory. The person who put the document together is telling the FBI, it's bar talk, it's grain of salt. They tell the FBI, and they keep using the same document. You know how they describe to the court the subsource? You know what they told the subsource in the application, the court about the subsource? That he was truthful and cooperative. Do you think those terms to the court, truthful and cooperative, fairly reflect the interview the FBI conducted in January and March?
I know the Inspector General found the disclosure was inadequate in that regard.
Not only, Mr. Comey, is it inadequate, it is criminally inadequate. You have a document central to getting a warrant against an American citizen. It is falling apart. The CIA says it's internet rumor. The person who prepared it was on a jihad against Trump on the payroll of the Democratic Party. The primary subsource was a Russian agent. When that person was interviewed by the FBI, he disavowed the reliability of the document to the point that it should never have been used again. And my question is, how could the system ignore all that, and how could it be used again in April and again in June? Do you know how that's possible?
Again, I'm not going to respond to your preamble.
Okay.
I think Mr. Horowitz found that it was not disclosed, and a variety of facts were not disclosed. He didn't find intentional misconduct, but he found concerning failures to disclose.
All I can say is there a duty by the FBI to inform the court of exculpatory information?
There is a heightened duty of candor, which includes exculpatory information and anything that might be relevant to the court's
Do you
consideration.
think it's exculpatory for Mr. Page, for the court to know that when he said the people he met with was a result of him being associated working with the CIA, do you think that would have been beneficial to Mr. Page?
Again, because I don't agree with your predicate to the question, I can't answer that.
Well, we got emails, and I'd be glad to show them to you about the association between the CIA and Mr. Page. Do you think it would be only fair for the court to be told that the primary subsource disavowed the document as being rumor, bar talk? You take half of it with a grain of salt. Do you think the FBI owed it to the court and Mr. Page to tell the court about these stunning revelations?
I think Mr. Horowitz found, and it seems a reasonable conclusion, that they should have informed.
How could the director of the FBI not know all of this? How is it possible that the system gathers so much exculpatory information, this internet rumor according to the CIA, that the actual interview of the subsource disavows the reliability document, that the actual subsource was a suspected Russian spy? How could all that happen and not get up to you, the director of the FBI, of one of the most important investigations in the history of the FBI? How is that possible?
I can only speculate because it didn't. And as I said, the investigation overall was incredibly important. The piece you're focused on is obviously important, but a much smaller slice.
Well, it's very important to Mr. Page. It should be important to every American. Is there anybody there advocating for Mr. Page during the warrant process?
No, it's an ex parte application, meaning there's only one side represented.
I just want to understand this. It's an ex parte event. It means that the cops have a duty to tell the court when they find things beneficial to the person under investigation. And over again between October and June, all the information found about the dossier made it less reliable, not more reliable, and you kept using it again and again and again. And the question was their bias. At what point in time do you put two and two together? That the people behind this hated Trump, and the reason they ran all these stop signs, they didn't want to take no for an answer. So do you recall getting an inquiry from the the intelligence community in September 2016 about a concern that the Clinton campaign was going to create a scandal regarding Trump and Russia?
I do not.
You don't remember getting a investigatory lead from the intelligence community? Hang on a second. Let me find my document here. September the 7th, 2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught? That doesn't
ring bells with me.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you. Let's just end with this. You get this inquiry from the Intelligence Committee to look at the Clinton campaign, basically trying to create a distraction, accusing Trump of being a Russian agent or a Russian stooge or whatever to distract from her email server problems. And how far-fetched is that, Mr. Comey, when we now know that the Democratic Party, through Fusion GPS, hired Christopher Steele, a foreign agent who had a very strong bias against Trump, who hired a Russian subsource who the FBI believed to be a Russian spy to compile a dossier that was a bunch of crap to be used against an American citizen working for the Trump campaign. You already knew that. Seems to me you'd want to investigate other allegations, but you're telling me that you don't recall this.
I'm sorry, Senator, is there a question?
Yes, you don't recall this inquiry I just read about September the 2016.
No, as I said, it doesn't, again.
Do you remember being told,
It doesn't sound familiar.
Do you remember being told by the the intelligence community? Remember the episode with Trump in the hotel with the hookers in the dossier?
Yes, I remember that portion.
Okay,
of this.
that's pretty hard to ignore. Do you
I tried-
remember in December, the Intelligence Committee basically said a U.S. intelligence community report contained information about the falsity of the details of Trump's sexual activity in Moscow and assessed that they were the product of Russian intelligence services infiltrating a source into Steele's network. So this is from the Horowitz report. In other words, the intelligence community had assessed that the dossier's description of a sexual escapade was actually a Russian disinformation campaign. Did you know that when it came out?
I'm not familiar with what you're reading from. I don't know whether
it's in the Horowitz report. I guess what I'm saying is that the Horowitz report has information they had in the file that the whole scenario with Trump and the sexual escapade was Russian disinformation. And you knew that, and you never told the court. To me, that is something that the court should know. If, in fact, the Russians had infiltrated Steele's sources to create this myth about sexual misconduct of the president, that to me seems to cry out for slowing down and stopping, not keep using the document. All I can say is that you believed it would be a dereliction of duty not to look at Trump-Russia. I'm not here to argue that nobody should look. I'm not here to argue that it was somebody other than the Russians who hacked into the DNC. It was the Russians. What I'm here to say is there were ample evidence of the other side being involved with Russia to create a scandal around Trump. They hired a foreign agent on the payroll of the Democratic Party who hired a Russian spy to create a document that was absolutely full of misinformation and complete lies. Did you know there is no Russian consulate in Miami? And the dossier mentions that there was one. Shouldn't the court have been told that part of the dossier is not reliable? Do you also know that Michael Cohen's adventures in Prague never happened? The dossier asserts that Michael Cohen went to Prague on some venture for Trump in Russia, and it never happened. And they know it never happened. They had information from a foreign government saying it's not true, and they never told the court. They never corrected all the misinformation in the dossier. It was used over and over again, and they never told the court about how unreliable it was. Is that a small thing or a big thing?
Anytime there are material omissions in an application to a judge of any kind, but especially in an ex parte proceeding, it's a very important issue.
Did you have a duty to look at any allegations regarding Clinton and Russia?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, you say you had a duty to look at allegations about the Trump campaign being involved with the Russians. You've got a letter now from Radcliffe saying that they intercepted information about an effort in July where Hillary Clinton approved an effort to link Trump to Russia, the mob. Did you have an investigation to look and see whether that was true?
I can't answer that. I've read Mr. Radcliffe's letter, which frankly I have trouble understanding.
Okay. Thank you very much.